She was just another figure in the sunlight. That's what he thought at first. The morning light poured across the private shooting range outside San Diego, long, golden streaks cutting through the rising heat. Marcus Rodriguez adjusted the straps of his tactical vest with the kind of deliberate precision that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan. Preparation wasn't routine for a Navy SEAL. It was survival. He'd come here for peace, or something close enough to pass for it. The rhythmic sound of rounds on steel targets had always quieted the ghosts in his head. Jake, the owner, met him at the front office, clipboard in hand, the same easy grin as always. "Rodriguez, good to see you, brother. You've got lane 7 today. Should be quiet, just you and one other shooter." Marcus nodded, perfect. But as he headed down the walkway, the other shooter caught his eye. A small figure, steady posture, deliberate movements. From this distance, she didn't stand out, a woman in a gray t-shirt, jeans, and a ball cap pulled low. Yet her stance, it wasn't the casual, off-balance lean of a weekend hobbyist. It was deliberate, controlled. Jake followed his gaze. "That's Sarah. Works part-time here, maintenance, customer help, that kind of thing. Quiet kid. Been with us about 6 months." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "She shoots often." "Yeah, pretty regularly, actually. Picked it up fast. Must have some natural talent." Natural talent. Marcus had heard that phrase 100 times before from instructors, rookies, and civilians trying to explain what they didn't understand. There was no such thing. Skill came from repetition, discipline, muscle memory, and experience that usually cost blood. He unpacked his precision rifle, the matte barrel catching the light. Each piece of his gear was selected with the same care he once gave to mission loadouts. The weight of it felt grounding, predictable. But the rhythm of gunfire downrange pulled at him, steady, measured, the kind of tempo that lived between breath and heartbeat, not the rushed trigger-slapping of amateurs. Whoever she was, she knew about breathing control, trigger reset, follow-through. He lined up his first shot, exhaled slowly, and pressed the trigger. A perfect center hit. Second shot touching the first. Third, same hole. He smiled faintly. For a moment there was no past, no noise, only control. But as he reloaded, his eyes drifted again to lane 9. Sarah was changing targets, movements efficient, no wasted motion. Her hair was tied back tight. Her shoulders were relaxed but ready, the posture of someone who'd carried weight that wasn't just physical. Jake said she'd started 6 months ago. That didn't fit. You didn't get that kind of rhythm in 6 months, not from YouTube tutorials or hobby classes. Something was off. And Marcus Rodriguez had survived long enough to trust his instincts. Hours passed, the California sun climbing high, and still her pattern didn't falter. Every round measured, every pause perfectly timed for breath control. It wasn't showy. It wasn't ego. It was discipline. When Jake came by again, Marcus asked casually, "That woman Sarah, you said she's new?" Jake shrugged. "Yeah, why, you interested?" Marcus smirked. "Just curious. She's got a steady hand for someone new." "Guess she's a fast learner," Jake said. "She trains hard, doesn't talk much though, keeps to herself." "Doesn't surprise me." As Jake left, Marcus leaned on his rifle, studying her from afar. Her shooting wasn't flashy, but the progression was telling. She wasn't just putting rounds on paper. She was running drills. Controlled cadence, target transitions, failure to stop patterns. Combat drills. By noon, she set her pistol down and pulled out a small notebook. Even from this distance, Marcus saw the neat handwriting, the way she documented her shots like data points. Most shooters didn't log their patterns unless they were military, law enforcement, or competitive. He packed his rifle, but the curiosity had turned into something heavier, a quiet pull that wouldn't let him walk away. When he finally approached, she was leaning over that notebook, pencil in hand. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his tone calm. Didn't mean to interrupt, I'm Marcus. I was on lane 7. She looked up, and for a heartbeat, he forgot what he'd meant to say. Green eyes, intelligent, guarded, eyes that had seen too much. Sarah, she said simply, offering a handshake. It was firm, precise, no hesitation. You shoot well, he said. Consistent grouping, not easy to maintain that under sun glare. She gave a polite nod. Still learning, always room to improve. It was a normal answer, too normal. The kind of answer you give when you don't want to answer at all. Marcus smiled faintly. You take lessons here. Mostly self-taught. A tiny smile touched her lips. Amazing what you can learn online these days. He almost laughed. Online tutorials didn't produce trigger discipline like that. But she was deflecting, and he knew better than to push. Whatever you're doing, it's working, he said. Thanks, I should get back to work. Jake asked me to help with maintenance later. He nodded, but as she packed up, he noticed the details, how she distributed the weight of her gear, the way her shoulders adjusted automatically when she lifted the bag. He'd seen that posture before in soldiers carrying heavier loads. When she left, he walked to her target. The pattern stopped him cold. Tight clusters, controlled transitions, chest shots, head shots, and timed bursts. Failure to stop drills. No civilian trained like that. He took a photo of the target with his phone, not to expose her, but to study. Because what he saw wasn't practice. It was muscle memory. When he found Jake again, he kept his tone casual. How'd she end up working here? Jake leaned back in his chair. Honestly, kinda random. She showed up one day asking for a job, said she just moved to town, needed part-time work. I didn't have an opening, but she seemed serious, so I took her on. References? Didn't ask. We're pretty chill about that stuff for part-time help. Marcus nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. A new arrival, no background, exceptional shooting ability, avoids questions. Someone running or hiding. He'd met people like her overseas, those who lived like shadows, carrying stories they couldn't tell. That night he couldn't shake it. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those green eyes again, steady but burdened. 3 days later, he was back at the range. Same time, same lane. She was there. And this time, Marcus watched her closer, not as a soldier observing a target, but as a man trying to understand someone who didn't want to be understood. Within minutes, his suspicion deepened. She wasn't just accurate, she was tactical. Her stances shifted fluidly between Weaver and isosceles, adapting to recoil, cover, angles. She cleared malfunctions like muscle reflex. That wasn't learned from a screen. That was drilled into bone. He approached her during a break, pretending nonchalance. Hey, Sarah, you've got a minute. She looked up, cautious but polite. Sure. I could use a spotter. I'm running some long-range tests. Helps to have someone call the wind. She hesitated. What distance? 500 yards, .308 match rounds. She nodded slowly, scanning the tree line. Wind southeast, around 8 miles an hour, gusts maybe 12. Humidity's mid-40s. Should drift about 3 clicks right at 500. Marcus blinked. That wasn't a guess. That was ballistic calculation, automatic, precise, instinctive. Good eye, he said carefully. You sure you're not a meteorologist? She smiled faintly. Just pay attention to the trees. As they walked to his shooting position, Marcus explained his rifle setup, the glass, the match load, the zero range. She listened with quiet interest, asking just the right questions. When she lifted the scope to inspect it, her movements were respectful, reverent, almost. Night Force 525, she said softly. Nice piece, trigger breaks clean. 3 pounds, he replied. Had it tuned in Colorado. Good work, she said. Feels honest. Honest, he liked that word. When they were set, he took the first shot. Perfect hit. She called it out like a professional spotter. Impact, dead center, hold steady. They worked in rhythm. He fired, she called corrections, adjusting for drift, timing the gusts. Her voice was calm, steady, unflinching. But when a strong gust blew across the range, she instinctively reached out, one hand on his shoulder, steadying him. A brief touch, and through her sleeve he felt it raised, uneven skin, scar tissue. Old, violent. He'd seen that kind of scarring before, blast trauma. She pulled her hand back immediately, but her eyes told him she knew he felt it. He kept his voice even. You've done this before. I'm just good at reading details. He smiled faintly. Right. Then he did something reckless, something every tactical instinct screamed against. He handed her the rifle. Your turn. She froze. For a moment he saw fear, not of him but of what the rifle represented, a past she didn't want to touch. I shouldn't, she whispered. It's your weapon. It's just steel, he said gently. You've earned a shot. Her fingers brushed the receiver, a breath, a pause. Then she exhaled, lowered herself into position, movements fluid, confident. Every motion told a story. The way she aligned her spine, the way she paused in her natural respiratory pause before breaking the trigger, the way she held through the recoil, eyes steady. The shot cracked. Dead center. Marcus stared through the scope, speechless. Another, he said quietly. She chambered, fired again. 2 holes overlapping. She sat up slowly, face unreadable. I told you, she said softly. I just practice a lot. Marcus took a step closer. Sarah, that wasn't practice. That was training, real training. Something flickered behind her eyes, panic, then exhaustion. I need to get back, she said abruptly, packing her gear. Wait, he said, his tone shifting, command steady, calm. I'm not here to judge you, but I know combat precision when I see it. If you're in trouble, maybe I can help. Her back stiffened. Why would you think I'm in trouble? Because people with your skill set don't hide behind part-time jobs, not unless they're running from something. She turned, finally meeting his eyes, and for the first time her mask slipped. Not fear, just weariness, the kind of fatigue that comes from carrying a secret too long. If I were, she said quietly, would you still want to help? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes. For a long moment she studied him, weighing something unseen. Then she said, almost to herself, then we don't talk here. He nodded. My place, it's secure. She hesitated. I'll check it first, sightlines, exits, then I'll decide. That answer made him smile. Professional instinct. When they exchanged numbers, her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from trust fighting its way back after years of silence. As she turned to leave, she said one last thing, quiet and raw. If this goes wrong, Marcus, if trusting you is a mistake. It won't be, he said. You have my word, Navy SEAL's word. And for the first time since he'd met her, she allowed herself a small, tired smile. She didn't come that night. Marcus waited anyway. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you listen to your own thoughts. He checked the perimeter twice, not out of paranoia, but habit. Years of tactical living had made certain rituals unshakable. By the second cup of coffee, he told himself she wouldn't show. And yet a part of him hoped she would. When his phone buzzed at 20:10, a single message appeared. On my way, no lights. No greeting, no name, just precision, operational tone. He turned off the porch light, locked down his security system, and watched the cameras. 20 minutes later, a small sedan rolled quietly down the street and parked under the shadow of a maple tree. She didn't get out right away. Through the camera feed, Marcus watched her sit there, scanning, calculating, reading angles, exits, reflections. She was running an assessment in her head, not nerves, procedure. Finally, she stepped out. The woman who walked toward his door was not the same one from the shooting range. The jeans and gray shirt were gone. She wore dark tactical denim, a black jacket, and boots that made no sound on the walkway. Her hair was tied back tighter. Every movement said prepared. When Marcus opened the door, he said nothing, just nodded once and stepped aside. "Coffee?" he asked. "Black," she said quietly. She didn't move far from the door. Her position gave her a line of sight on the entry and the hallway. It wasn't casual. It was tactical instinct. As he poured, she scanned the room. Her gaze touched on corners, windows, furniture, not in curiosity but in calculation. She wasn't looking at his home. She was assessing cover and angles. "Nice house," she said at last. "Solid construction. Security systems good. Wired backup or wireless redundancy." "Both," Marcus said, handing her a cup. "I like having options." She took a sip. "Good coffee." "Military habit," he replied. "The bad stuff ruins you for life." She almost smiled, almost. When she finally sat, it was on the edge of the chair, posture straight, eyes always moving. Marcus sat across from her, careful not to crowd the space. "So," he said quietly, "are you ready to tell me what's really going on?" Sarah stared at her coffee for a long moment. Then when she spoke, her voice was calm, too calm, like someone reading from a report she'd rehearsed too many times. "My name's not Sarah." Marcus said nothing, he just listened. "It's Sergeant Sarah Mitchell, U.S. Army, Military Police." She paused, the words landing heavy. "Assigned to prisoner transport and VIP security." He recognized the tone, not confession, debriefing. "3 years ago," she continued, "I was deployed with my unit to Afghanistan. Routine prisoner transfer, or that's what they told us." Her eyes had that distant focus soldiers get when memory takes over. Marcus knew that look, the 1,000-yard stare of someone reliving something they'd never wanted to remember. "Our convoy got hit. It wasn't random. RPGs, IEDs, small arms, perfect coordination. Someone fed them our exact route, timing, everything." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Inside job." She nodded. "Had to be. Within 30 seconds we lost 2 vehicles, communications jammed, chaos." Her fingers tightened around the mug, knuckles whitening. "I was in the lead vehicle. I saw the prisoner we were transporting grab the comms handset, our comms, encrypted, and start speaking perfect English, coordinating with someone on our frequency." Marcus froze. "He was working with someone in your command." "Exactly. I recorded part of it. Not much, just enough to prove someone inside was feeding enemy intelligence." "What happened then?" Sarah exhaled, slow and painful. "I made it out with the prisoner alive. Everyone else didn't." Her voice faltered. For the first time, she wasn't the professional, the operative. She was human again, haunted by ghosts she'd buried. "I should have followed orders," she said softly. "Delivered him to the secure site like protocol demanded. But I needed to know who he was talking to, so I went off script, took him to a safe house, started asking questions." Marcus didn't interrupt. He just let her talk. "He told me everything. There was a network, Americans, contractors, intel analysts, selling classified routes, patrol schedules, informant names. Every ambush, every dead patrol was a paycheck for someone." Her eyes lifted to his, hard and tired. "Someone wearing our flag was making money on our blood." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. "I tried to report it," she continued. "Used secured channels. Within 6 hours, my safe house was hit by a precision strike. No drones in the area, no surveillance birds. Someone triangulated me from inside." Marcus felt the cold crawl up his spine. "They sent a kill team." She nodded. "I barely made it out. The prisoner didn't." "What about the recording?" "I kept it. It's all I have, audio of that call. You can hear 3 voices, 2 I later matched to my unit's command staff. The third, higher rank, I couldn't trace it. Since then, Marcus asked. She leaned back, eyes closing briefly. Since then, I've been running. Every time I try to contact anyone official, I get tracked. I've had to disappear over and over, change towns, jobs, names. There's a whole branch of this thing that hunts whistleblowers before they can talk. And the data. I still have it, along with financial records, transfers, logs I intercepted before I went dark. But it's not enough. Not to expose all of them. I need access to military databases to verify what I found. That's what I can't do alone. Marcus stood slowly, packing the room. Everything she said fit, every pattern, every instinct. He looked at her, the woman who'd been hiding in plain sight behind range goggles and polite smiles, and saw what she really was, a soldier carrying a truth too dangerous to speak. Sarah, he said quietly, if all that's true, you're not just a fugitive, you're a threat to some very powerful people. I know, she said simply, that's why I stopped trusting anyone. And yet you're here. She met his eyes. Because you didn't flinch when you saw the scars, because you didn't ask stupid questions, and because you said you'd help. He nodded once, then I will. You don't even know how deep this goes, she said. I don't need to. If Americans are dying because someone's selling them out, I'll stop it. That's my job on paper or off. For the first time, something cracked through her hard exterior. Not a smile, not relief, just a soft flicker of disbelief. You'd risk your career for this. He paused. Careers end. Integrity doesn't. Silence filled the room again, the kind that carried weight instead of awkwardness. She reached into her jacket and placed a small encrypted drive on the table. This is everything I have, she said. Evidence, audio transfers. If they find out I gave it to you, I'm dead within the week. Marcus looked at the drive, then back at her. Then we make sure they don't find out. He didn't touch it yet. He knew what holding something like that meant. Possession of classified data wasn't just risky, it was lethal. Who else knows? He asked. No one. The few people I tried to contact are either gone or disappeared. He nodded slowly, decision hardening behind his eyes. Then we start from here. We analyze the data. We identify patterns. We move quietly through secure back channels. And if they find us, she asked, then they'll regret it. She gave a short, humorless laugh. That's what we all say until they send the right team. He met her gaze. They can send whoever they want. I'm done watching good people get buried in silence. For the next hour, she briefed him financial leaks, wire transfers to shell accounts, cross-referenced with attack dates. Marcus took notes, mapped connections, and recognized names. Contractors, officers, analysts, people with clearances that reached far beyond pay grade. This isn't small, he murmured. This is systemic. I told you, she said. They're everywhere. The clock hit midnight before they stopped talking. When she finally leaned back, exhaustion showed beneath the control. Marcus noticed the slight tremor in her hand as she sipped what was left of her coffee. You need rest, he said quietly. I don't sleep much, she admitted. Still, you're safe here tonight. She hesitated. Safe's a strong word. He smiled faintly. You'll learn to trust mine. She looked at him, measuring something again, the kind of calculation soldiers make before choosing who to cover in a firefight. Then softly, if this goes wrong, they won't stop. Not with me, not with you. Marcus nodded. Then we make sure it goes right. She stood, walked toward the window, and looked out into the empty street, dark, silent, ordinary. I used to think I could fix it alone, she said quietly, but all it did was break me more. He joined her by the window. You didn't break, you adapted. That's what survivors do. Her voice was almost a whisper. I don't want to just survive anymore. Marcus watched her reflection, those steady green eyes that still held fire beneath the fatigue. Then let's finish what they started, he said, and burn the rot out from the inside. Outside, a car passed, headlights washing briefly across the room, then gone. But something in that fleeting light caught her face, and he saw it again. That quiet mix of fear and resolve that only warriors who have lost everything carry. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sarah turned to him, the mask gone completely. "If we do this," she said softly, "there's no turning back." "I know," he said. "And if they come for us, then we make them remember why they should have feared us first." A long pause. Then finally she nodded. "All right, Navy, let's expose some ghosts. Why do the worst battles happen after the war ends?" Marcus thought about that as the dawn light spilled through his blinds. Sarah hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out, her breathing shallow, one hand always near the pistol she'd placed on the table. When she finally stood, it was with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of conditioning. No wasted motion, no hesitation. She didn't look at the sunrise, she looked at the perimeter, always scanning, always assessing. Marcus was the same way, though for different reasons. His mind was already running scenarios, threat trees, fallback plans. She was the kind of person who'd learned the hard way that safe was just a word people said before things went wrong. He poured 2 cups of coffee. "Cream or sugar?" Sarah gave a faint smile. "Haven't used either since Kandahar." "Didn't think so." For a moment it was almost normal. 2 soldiers sharing coffee, pretending the world outside wasn't hunting one of them. Then the moment passed. Marcus powered up his tablet. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's see what we're really dealing with." Sarah pulled the encrypted drive from her jacket. The small device looked harmless, almost delicate, like something that shouldn't carry the weight of betrayal and blood. He slotted it in, loaded the files. Lines of code, directories, data tables flickered to life on the screen. "Audio recordings," she said. "Financial ledgers, comm logs, personnel transfer reports." Marcus began opening them methodically. The recordings came first, distorted radio chatter, static, and then voices. "Mail American, calm, too calm. Convoy Alpha 1 confirmed. Package en route. Payment verified." Marcus froze. "Payment?" The word echoed like a gunshot. Another voice replied, low and clinical. "Confirm termination if contact is made." The recording cut to static. He leaned back, jaw tight. "That's a kill order." Sarah nodded. "And it came from inside our own secure frequency. I traced the call sign. Belonged to Major Carson. He died 2 weeks later in an IED strike." "Convenient." "Too convenient," she said. "Every link in that chain that could identify the leak is dead or reassigned." Marcus scrolled through the rest, documents, fund transfers routed through shell corporations, offshore accounts linked to defense contractors. Someone had built an empire on betrayal. "How far up do you think it goes?" he asked. Sarah exhaled slowly. "Far enough that I stopped counting ranks. Some of these payments line up with operations that never made the news. Covert deployments, black site transfers, drone strike authorizations." She rubbed her temples, exhaustion creeping in. Every time an operation failed, somebody got paid. Marcus felt it then, that cold, creeping fury that every soldier learns to bury but never really loses. The betrayal of trust, the violation of code. "All right," he said. "We'll cross-reference this with internal communication logs. I still have limited clearance access through naval channels. If I route through encrypted proxies, I can pull patterns without triggering alarms." Sarah's eyes lifted. "You'd risk your credentials for that." He smiled faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time I bent a few protocols to do the right thing." For hours they worked in silence, side by side. The only sounds the faint hum of electronics and the occasional soft click of keys. She was methodical, almost surgical in her focus. Marcus admired that, how she compartmentalized pain and precision, the way elite operators do when the mission is all that's left to believe in. At one point, she caught him watching her and said quietly, "You don't have to fix this for me." He shook his head. "I'm not. I'm fixing it because it's wrong." Her gaze softened just slightly. "That's what got me here in the first place." He didn't argue. There was nothing to say. By midday, the first thread emerged. A name. A single, familiar signature buried in financial logs. Marcus frowned. "No way." Sarah leaned in. "You know him." "Rear Admiral Hensley, Joint Operations Command. He sat on my review board in 18. And now he's receiving direct deposits from a defense subcontractor that doesn't exist." Marcus exhaled sharply. "Jesus." The room fell silent again, the truth hanging heavy between them. Sarah spoke first. "You see why I ran?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, and why you can't run anymore." Her expression hardened. "You sound like my co." Maybe he was right. She looked away, her jaw tight. "He's dead." The silence that followed was long and raw. Finally, Marcus closed the laptop and said, "We're not going to them. We'll build redundancy, triple encryption, multiple off-site copies." She glanced up, meaning even if they find us, the truth won't die with us. For the first time, she seemed to breathe a little easier. Not relaxed, she'd forgotten how, but something close to it. "Why are you helping me, really?" she asked. He thought for a moment before answering. "Because somewhere out there, a kid's writing a letter home to his mom, thinking he's fighting for something pure. And I refuse to let people like this make that a lie." Her eyes flickered just briefly with something that looked like gratitude. "You still believe in that kind of purity?" He smiled faintly. "No, but I believe in redemption." The word lingered. Redemption. It hit her like a memory. "I used to think the same," she said quietly, "before I became the collateral damage." They went back to work. Hours passed. They built redundancies, encrypted backups, and began assembling what Marcus called the firewall of truth. If anyone tried to delete their files, the system would auto-release the data to multiple recipients, journalists, oversight committees, even public servers. By late afternoon, fatigue showed on both their faces. Marcus leaned back. "We need a break." Sarah shook her head. "Breaks get you killed." "Not here," he said gently. She didn't respond, just rubbed the back of her neck, and Marcus caught sight of the faint burn scarring running down her shoulder. Not new, not small. "Blast injury?" he asked softly. She froze, then nodded once. "IED, the convoy. I was last vehicle when it hit. I still hear it sometimes, every time I close my eyes." He nodded. "Yeah, they never really go quiet, do they?" Her eyes flicked up. Surprised, the kind of surprise that comes when someone actually understands instead of sympathizes. "No," she said, "they don't." They shared that silence, the soldier's silence, the one where words can't fill the spaces between loss and survival. As dusk fell, they had enough compiled data to map the entire structure of the network. But with that came a new realization. "They're going to notice," Sarah said quietly. "Whoever's still inside, they'll feel the data moving." Marcus looked at the blinking cursor on the screen. "Then we stay ahead of them." "How?" "By being unpredictable. You've been running alone, hiding. That's over. From now on, we move on offense." Her brow furrowed. "Offense?" "Yeah, we hit first." Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, Navy, let's play offense." They started mapping leads, contractors, accounts, contact points. Each name was another ghost pulled into the light. It was late when Marcus finally noticed her head nodding slightly, exhaustion catching up to her. "Get some rest," he said softly. "I'll keep watch." She wanted to protest, but didn't. Instead, she sank into the couch, still fully clothed, her weapon within reach. Minutes passed before her breathing evened out. Marcus watched her, the steady rise and fall of her chest, the faint lines of tension still etched around her mouth. She built her life around vigilance, and now, for the first time in years, she'd let her guard down for him. He turned back to the laptop, scanning the data again. Then he froze. A ping. Unauthorized access attempt. Someone was probing their network. He killed the connection instantly, rerouted through a secondary VPN, and checked the trace. The signal came from Virginia, Langley. His pulse quickened. CIA servers. He reached for the comm panel, instinct kicking in, and checked the perimeter cams. No movement outside. Not yet. Then from the couch. "What's wrong?" She was awake, eyes sharp, hand already on her pistol. "Someone's trying to breach the system," he said quietly. "High-level access, agency level." Her expression hardened. "Then they know." "Maybe not yet, but they will soon." Sarah stood calm but pale. "How long before they locate us?" "Hours, maybe less." "Then we don't have hours," she said. Marcus looked at her, the woman who had walked into his quiet, ordered life and turned it into a battlefield again. "Then we move," he said. She nodded once, already packing. "You got a safe route?" "Always." As they shut down the systems and prepared to leave, Marcus looked back at the monitor one last time. The files were secure, encrypted, waiting for release. But as the screen went dark, he saw his reflection, a soldier about to go to war again, not for orders or politics, but for truth. He turned to Sarah. "Once we start this, there's no hiding again." "I stopped hiding the day I met you," she said quietly. And for a moment, before the world closed in again, he believed her. They left before sunrise. No headlights, no noise. The world was still half asleep as Marcus guided the truck down the back roads that snaked out of the city. The freeway was too exposed. He'd learned that long ago, in war. The safest paths were the ones that didn't exist on maps. Sarah sat beside him, eyes alert but silent, scanning the mirrors every few seconds. Her hand never strayed far from the pistol on her thigh. She didn't fidget. She didn't blink much either. The sky bled from indigo to gray as the miles rolled by. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence soldiers share when words are wasted on things they both already know. After nearly an hour, Marcus finally spoke. "Where do we go?" "Somewhere no one looks twice," Sarah said. "Not big, not small. Off the grid, but with cell coverage we can control." He nodded. "There's an old ranger station north of Julian. I used it once for recon work. Generator power, satellite uplink. You'll like the sightlines." Sarah gave a faint, approving nod. Sightlines are everything. As they drove, Marcus noticed how she kept her body angled toward the window, giving herself a view of both the road ahead and the tree line, always assessing threat vectors, always thinking like someone who expected danger. He wanted to tell her to relax, but he knew better. You don't unlearn survival, you just carry it differently. They reached the foothills before noon. Pines thickened around the winding road, sunlight cutting through in sharp flashes. The air smelled cleaner, colder. When the cabin finally appeared through the trees, small, wooden, isolated, Sarah exhaled slowly. "You weren't kidding." "Old government property. Nobody comes up here but deer and the occasional hiker." She stepped out first, scanning the tree line, then the roof line, then the road behind them. "Clear," she said finally. Inside it smelled like dust and memories, wood, metal, silence. Marcus opened the shutters to let light in. Power runs off generator, water from a gravity feed, signal jammers in that cabinet if we need blackout mode. Sarah walked the perimeter. Each creak of the floorboards echoed softly under her boots. "You did recon here?" "Yeah, once. We were tracking smuggling routes across the border. Spent a week sleeping on that floor." She glanced at him, alone. He smiled faintly, mostly. For the first time since he'd met her, she almost laughed. a soft exhale that carried a trace of warmth he hadn't heard before. They spent the afternoon setting up laptops, drives, backup power. Every motion was precise, unspoken teamwork between people who didn't need to explain procedure. By evening, they'd reestablished a secure network using the uplink dish behind the cabin. Sarah stood by the small window, looking out at the fading light. They'll be scanning for my last signal ping. Already scrambled it, Marcus said. I routed your last IP through 4 dummy servers in South America. If they track it, they'll be chasing ghosts. She looked at him, and for a brief second her guard dropped. You're good at this. He shrugged. We all leave the service with certain habits. Mine just happened to violate a few laws. Sarah's lips twitched. Guess I'm in the right company then. They both smiled, small, tired, real. As the night settled in, Marcus lit the small fireplace. The orange glow painted the walls in shifting patterns. Sarah sat across from him, boots off, eyes fixed on the flames. You ever get tired of it? She asked suddenly. Of what? The fight, the constant awareness, the feeling that every sound means something. He looked into the fire. You stop feeling that, you stop breathing. That's not living. No, he agreed. It's surviving, but sometimes surviving is all we get. She nodded quietly. That's what I told myself for 3 years. Until now. Her gaze lifted to him, steady but softer than before. You make it sound like I've got something else to live for. He didn't answer, didn't need to. The silence said enough. Minutes stretched, the fire cracked softly. Then Sarah spoke again, voice low. There's something you need to know. The recording, the one I made in Afghanistan, it's not the only copy. Marcus leaned forward. Go on. I left a duplicate with someone I trusted. A journalist. Former embedded reporter named Lena Ward. She covered operations out of Bagram before she got blacklisted. You trust her? She saved my life once, pulled me out after the convoy hit, but she doesn't know everything. I cut contact when I realized I was being hunted, if they've traced her. Marcus stood immediately, his mind shifting into operational mode. Where is she? Somewhere in New Mexico. Last I heard, she was freelancing under an alias. Then we find her. Sarah shook her head. It's not that simple. If we make contact, we'll light up on every watch list. They'll know we're moving west. Marcus paced the room, thinking, unless we use her as bait. Her head snapped up. Bait. If they're tracking your movements, they'll expect you to go for the copy. We can control the narrative, make them think you're heading there while we draw them somewhere else. That's risky. He met her gaze. So's everything about this. She studied him a long time before nodding. All right, let's hear it. Marcus outlined the plan, digital misdirection. They'd send encrypted communications through ghost accounts that hinted at a rendezvous near Albuquerque. Meanwhile, they'd stay put, off-grid, monitoring intercepts to see who took the bait. Sarah listened carefully. You've done this before. Counterintelligence work. Afghanistan, Syria, a few places that don't officially exist. She smiled faintly. And here I thought you were just a guy who liked guns. He grinned, that too. Hours later, the trap was set. Digital breadcrumbs pointed toward a false meetup, complete with fabricated GPS data and timestamps. Then they waited. Waiting was the hardest part. Not the danger, the silence. Sarah sat by the window, rifle across her lap. Marcus watched her profile in the firelight, the calm, unflinching focus of someone who'd lost too much to fear. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. Sure. When the ambush happened, why didn't you walk away? You could have disappeared, built a new life somewhere. She didn't look at him when she answered. Because walking away would have meant accepting it. Accepting that my friends died for someone's profit. I couldn't live with that. He nodded slowly. That's the thing about people like us. We mistake conscience for weakness until it's all we've got left. She turned toward him. And what's left of yours, Marcus? He met her gaze. Maybe this, helping you, making sure truth still means something. Her expression softened, a flicker of understanding between two broken soldiers holding each other up in silence. Outside, the wind picked up, whispering through the trees. The woods went darker, denser. Then the satellite console beeped. Incoming signal. Marcus moved fast, checking the feed. Got a ping from one of the ghost accounts. Someone's tracing the dummy coordinates. Sarah was instantly alert, standing beside him. Can you identify the source? Encrypted, but the routing matches the same Virginia server that hit us before. Langley again. Or someone pretending to be. The console beeped again, multiple pings this time. They took the bait, Marcus said. 3 nodes just went active: government networks, private contractors, and 1 foreign IP. Sarah frowned. Foreign. Eastern Europe, could be shell routing or mercenaries. Her jaw tightened. They're deploying teams. He nodded, and we'll know where they're going before they do. The next 12 hours became a quiet race, the kind of invisible war fought behind screens and signal intercepts. Marcus tracked data spikes and geolocations, while Sarah monitored satellite imagery through public channels. By dawn, confirmation arrived. 2 unmarked aircraft departed from Andrews Air Force Base, destination listed as training exercise. One was headed west. Sarah stared at the coordinates. That's near Albuquerque. Marcus exhaled. Then our trap worked. She smiled faintly. They're chasing shadows. For now, he said, but it won't last. When they realize the trail's cold, they'll start backtracking. How long do we have? A day, maybe 2. She nodded slowly. Then we use it. Marcus looked at her, and something about her expression changed, the weariness replaced by purpose. For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't look like someone running from the past. She looked like someone preparing to face it. What's next? She asked. Next, he said, we build a failsafe, a broadcast plan that dumps every file we have to multiple recipients the moment our system senses a breach. Journalists, oversight committees, even public databases. She raised an eyebrow. That's a big hammer to swing. Big enemies need big noise. Sarah smiled, a real smile this time. You sound like you've done this before. He met her eyes. Not like this, never for someone who mattered. She looked away, but her voice was quiet, almost tender. Careful, Navy. You start sounding like someone who still believes in people. He smiled. Maybe I do. Outside, a storm rolled over the mountains, thunder low and distant, like artillery too far away to see. Inside the cabin, 2 soldiers planned to bring down an empire. And for the first time in a long, long while, Sarah Mitchell didn't feel alone. They came at night, just like she'd said they would. No warnings, no drones, no headlights. Only silence. And then footsteps. Marcus was the first to hear it. The low crunch of gravel outside the cabin, steady, disciplined. Not curious hikers, not locals, professionals. He moved to the table, hand wrapping the grip of his rifle without a sound. Across the room, Sarah was already awake, eyes open, pistol drawn, breath measured. She didn't need words. One look and they understood each other. It's time. He killed the lamp, plunging the cabin into darkness. The only light came from the faint flicker of the dying fire. Outside, the sound of movement grew clearer. 3, maybe 4, tight formation, 2 flanking. Thermals, Marcus whispered. She nodded, slipping the night vision goggles over her eyes. The soft hum filled the silence for a heartbeat. 4 men suppressed weapons, closing from east and north. Agency. Or private, her voice was steady. Either way, they're here for us. Marcus's jaw tightened. He scanned the window, catching a faint reflection, a figure moving through the tree line. "On my mark," he murmured. "You take north, I'll flank east." "Copy." He moved first, low, silent steps across the wood floor, years of training coming back like muscle memory. He felt calm, focused. This was familiar ground. He slipped out the back door, the cold air biting at his skin. The forest was pitch black, the moon hidden behind clouds. Every sound was magnified, his own heartbeat, the rustle of pine needles, the faint metallic click of a rifle safety 50 meters away. Sarah's voice came softly over comms. "Contact right, 20 meters. They're scanning the perimeter." He crouched behind a log, steadying his breathing. "Let them come closer," he whispered. Seconds ticked by. Then a silhouette moved into view, the faint green glow of NVGs cutting through the dark. Marcus aimed, finger tightening, and fired one suppressed round. The figure dropped soundlessly. Two more turned toward the sound, one raising a hand to signal. That hesitation cost him. Sarah's shot hit clean through the shoulder, dropping him instantly. The remaining two opened fire, silent flashes through the trees. Suppressors muted the chaos, but the air still cracked with the pressure of bullets slicing past. Marcus ducked behind cover, returned fire precise, controlled, no wasted rounds. Then silence. He scanned clear east. "North clear," Sarah replied. Marcus moved forward, checking bodies. No insignia, no dog tags, civilian-grade tactical gear. Each one wore identical comm units and carried M4 carbines modified for close quarters. "These aren't agency," Marcus said quietly. "They're contractors." Sarah crouched beside one of the fallen men, pulling a small patch from his vest, a faded insignia barely visible under the grime. "Halcyon Security." Marcus's stomach tightened. "Jesus, that's a defense subcontractor. They've been running covert ops for years. Half their staff are ex-CIA. Then they've gone private with government funding," she said. "Outsourced cleanup." He looked around. "Then this was a test run. They wanted to confirm our location." Sarah's eyes darkened. "Which means more will follow." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then we move now." Within minutes they had packed essentials, laptops, encrypted drives, weapons, minimal gear. Sarah rigged the cabin with 2 timed thermite charges. "Won't leave evidence," she said, "just ash." Marcus gave a tight nod. "Good, they can chase ghosts again." As they drove off into the dark, the reflection of the cabin glowed faintly in the rearview mirror, then vanished in a burst of silent light. Neither of them looked back. For the next 6 hours they drove through the mountains, switching roads, avoiding main routes. The storm from the night before had turned the ground slick, slowing them down. By dawn they stopped at a lookout point overlooking a valley, quiet, mist-covered, forgotten. Marcus killed the engine. "We'll lay low here for a few hours." Sarah stepped out, stretching her shoulders, scanning the horizon. "They'll think we're still heading south. That gives us a small window." He joined her at the edge of the cliff, the sun rising behind them. The light touched her face, tired, pale, but fierce. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "You ever notice how beautiful it is when you're hunted?" He frowned. "Beautiful." She smiled faintly. "Because you start to see everything like it's the last time. Every sound, every color, it all feels louder." He looked at her not as an operative but as a person. The weight she carried wasn't just fear, it was grief, years of it. "You lost someone on that convoy, didn't you?" Her expression changed, not anger, not surprise, just a quiet sadness. "Yeah, my partner, Sergeant Vega. We served together 3 tours. He was driving when we got hit." "What happened?" "He died trying to drag me out of the wreck. I told him to leave me. He said, 'Not my style.'" Her voice trembled for the first time. "By the time I got him free, he was already gone." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing worth saying. only silence that acknowledged the kind of loss words couldn't fix. Finally, Sarah wiped her face with the back of her hand. They said it was an accident, but I knew. Someone planned it, and I swore I'd make it mean something. Marcus looked out over the valley. And you are? She shook her head. Not yet, not until the people who buried him are exposed. He turned to her. Then we finish this for him, for all of them. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain. Sarah's eyes met his, tired, scarred, but alive. You always talk like you've already made peace with dying, she said. He smiled faintly. I did, years ago. Everything after that's just borrowed time. She studied him, and for the first time there was warmth in her voice. Then maybe it's time we both start living instead. He didn't answer, but in that silence something shifted, not romance, not relief, just understanding. The kind that only exists between people who have seen too much and survived anyway. The radio crackled softly, a faint digital ping. Marcus froze, eyes darting to the signal monitor. Sarah stepped closer. What is it? He frowned. Encrypted broadcast, unknown origin, could be one of our ghost relays activating. Or someone using them. He ran a trace. Signals bouncing through South America, but the final node, he stopped. What? New Mexico. Sarah's heart dropped. Lena. Marcus nodded grimly. They found her. Sarah's voice turned hard, focused. Then she's in danger because of me. She's tough, Marcus said. Maybe she got clear. Sarah shook her head. No, she'll stay, she won't run. Marcus looked at her, the decision already forming behind her eyes. You want to go after her? I have to. Then it's a trap. Maybe, she said quietly, but I'd rather walk into one than let someone else die for me. Marcus took a slow breath. You realize if we go there, everything changes. They'll know we're still alive. I don't care, she said. I won't lose another person because I hesitated. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then we plan it smart, no direct approach. We recon first. She gave a faint smile. That's the Navy talking. Someone has to keep you Army types from charging in blind. That earned the smallest laugh, sharp and brief, but real. They began to plan routes, backup communications, extraction points. Each decision made with calm precision, as if they'd done this 100 times before. By nightfall, they were back on the road heading west, into the fading light. The air between them was thick with unspoken truths, about guilt, loyalty, redemption. Sarah stared out the window, the orange sky reflecting in her eyes. Marcus glanced at her. You know, Vega would have been proud you didn't run. She looked at him, surprised. You don't even know him. No, he said quietly, but I know the kind of soldier who dies for someone else. They don't do it for medals. They do it because they saw something worth saving. I think he saw that in you. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she turned away, blinking hard. The truck drove on, winding through the desert roads, dust kicking up behind them like ghosts of the past. They didn't know if they'd survive the next 24 hours. But they knew one thing, they weren't running anymore. Not from the truth. Not from the past. Not from themselves. And as the headlights cut through the endless dark, Marcus whispered under his breath, words she barely heard but would never forget. Sometimes the only way to save something is to burn it all down. The desert stretched out in silence. Flat, endless, unforgiving. They had been driving for 12 hours, stopping only for fuel and to wipe the dust from the windshield. The world out here was nothing but horizon and memory, the kind of landscape that stripped a person down to what they really were. Sarah sat still, hands on her knees, eyes fixed on the road ahead. She hadn't said much since they crossed into New Mexico. Marcus knew better than to press. When soldiers went quiet, it wasn't because they had nothing to say, it was because they were trying not to feel. The first radio tower appeared on the horizon just as the sun began to fall. A small town sat beneath it, a scatter of houses, one diner, one gas station, and a wind that carried the smell of heat and rust. Where would she go? Marcus asked. Sarah scanned the main street. Somewhere with power, connection, and exits. She's cautious, but she wouldn't hide underground. Too hard to broadcast from there. He nodded, then she's close to that tower. They parked 2 streets away from the diner, using an old repair shop for cover. Marcus handed her the binoculars. She focused on the small motel beside the diner. Second-floor window, curtains drawn, antenna cable leading to the roof. That's her. Marcus studied it. No movement. None yet, but look at the lot. 2 cars parked, too clean, too evenly spaced. Surveillance formation. He frowned. Then they got here before us. Maybe she's still alive. Or maybe they're waiting for us to find out. Sarah's jaw set. We're going in. He hesitated. We do this smart. 2-man entry, you take the rear stairs, I'll breach front after 30 seconds. She nodded. No gunfire unless necessary. They waited until dusk swallowed the street, then moved. Sarah's boots made no sound as she climbed the narrow staircase at the back of the motel. Each step creaked just enough to make her heart hammer. She reached the landing, pressed against the wall, and tested the doorknob. Locked. She slid a pick from her pocket, quick, practiced, and within seconds the lock gave a soft click. Inside was darkness. Dust hung in the air like ghosts. Marcus, I'm in, she whispered. Copy. 30 seconds. She stepped forward, sweeping the small room with her pistol. Bed unmade. Laptop on the table, coffee still warm. Then a sound, soft, behind the bathroom door. She turned the handle slowly and pushed. Lena Ward was sitting on the floor, wrists zip-tied, blood on her temple but eyes sharp. Sarah dropped to one knee instantly. Lena, it's me. Lena blinked, disbelief flickering through pain. Sarah. Yeah, hold still. She cut the plastic ties and checked her pulse. You're okay. Lena tried to speak, but her throat rasped. They knew, said you'd come, use me as bait. Sarah's stomach turned cold. Who? Before Lena could answer, Marcus's voice came through the comm. Movement. 2 targets entering from the east corridor. Sarah pulled Lena behind the bed, raising her weapon. Stay down. The first man came through the door fast, silenced, pistol up, and Sarah dropped him before his foot hit the carpet. The second froze just long enough for Marcus to appear behind him, rifle pressed to his neck. Drop it, Marcus said quietly. The man hesitated, then swung his elbow hard. Marcus ducked, countered, drove his shoulder into the attacker's ribs and slammed him against the wall. A brief struggle, then silence. Marcus exhaled, clear. Sarah checked Lena again. You're safe now. Lena gave a weak smile, still the same voice, cold but comforting. Sarah half smiled back. You picked a bad place for a vacation. Marcus was already stripping the fallen men of their IDs. Private security again. No agency markings. Sarah stood. They must have tracked her through the file backups. She probably tried to upload something. Lena nodded weakly. I sent a copy to a journalist in D.C. Thought it might buy time. They cut my feed within minutes. Marcus's expression darkened. They've expanded the net. Sarah crouched beside her. We're getting you out. You can rest once we reach the border. Lena shook her head slowly. No, Sarah, I'm not leaving. What are you talking about? Lena's voice was a whisper. They implanted a tracker, back of my neck. I heard them joke about it, said you'd come for me and that's how they'd find you. Marcus's eyes widened. She's right, that's how they followed us here. Sarah froze. No, there has to be time to. Marcus checked his watch. We've got maybe 20 minutes before they triangulate the signal. Lena looked at her friend, eyes wet but steady. You can't carry me out. You'll never outrun them. Sarah's throat closed. I'm not leaving you here. You have to. Lena reached up, gripping her wrist. You have what they want, the evidence. Don't let it die here. Marcus stepped back, giving them space. He'd seen that look before, the look of someone who already knew their ending. Sarah, Lena whispered, you always said truth was worth dying for. Prove it. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. Don't you dare make me choose. Lena smiled faintly. You already did. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then Sarah nodded, her face hardening through the grief. She pressed a small pistol into Lena's hand. At least take this. Lena's fingers closed around it. Now go. Marcus touched Sarah's shoulder. We have to move now. She turned one last time. I'll come back. Lena's voice followed her out the door, soft, certain. No, you won't. They were halfway to the truck when the first drone buzzed overhead. Marcus shoved her down behind a dumpster as a red targeting laser swept the street. Recon model, visual confirmation only, but strike teams not far behind. Sarah's chest heaved. We can't leave her. Marcus looked at her, pain flickering behind his calm. If we go back, we both die, and so does the truth. For a moment she wanted to fight him, to turn around, to run into the fire. But she didn't. Vega's voice, Lena's words, they all merged into one truth. You can't save everyone. They slipped through the alleys, avoiding the main road. The storm clouds gathered above as if the desert itself was holding its breath. When the first explosion hit, the motel lit up like a sunrise. Sarah froze, her knees buckled. The shockwave rolled over them, heat and dust slamming into the air. Marcus caught her before she fell. She chose it, he said quietly. She made it count. But she didn't hear him. Her ears were ringing, her eyes wide with disbelief. She was my last link, Sarah whispered. My last friend. Marcus looked toward the rising smoke. Then we make sure she's not forgotten. They reached the outskirts before nightfall, the truck bouncing over dry earth. The horizon burned behind them, red and endless. Sarah sat in silence, hands trembling, the glow of the fire reflected in her eyes. She gave her life for a file, Marcus said softly. No, Sarah murmured. She gave it for what's in it. He glanced at her, which is. She opened the laptop on her knees, loaded the last decrypted file Lena had sent before capture. Images, documents, flight manifests, names. And then one name repeated across them all. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Admiral Hensley. Sarah nodded. And not just him, senators, contractors, people who funded the black accounts that killed our soldiers. He leaned back, jaw tight. This isn't just corruption, it's a machine. She stared at the screen, voice flat. And we're the wrench. They drove until the signal monitor blinked green, safe zone. Marcus stopped the truck in a dry ravine and killed the lights. Sarah looked out at the desert again, her face hard and still. Lena died believing this matters. If we don't finish it, she died for nothing. Marcus rested his hands on the steering wheel. Then we finish it, but we do it smart. How? He pointed toward the horizon. There's an old airfield 60 miles north, abandoned CIA runway. If we get there, I can use the uplink to push this data directly through a satellite feed. No trace. And if they intercept? He gave a grim smile. Then we make it loud enough the world can't ignore it. Sarah leaned back, exhausted but determined. And after that? He hesitated. After that, we probably run again. She turned to him, voice almost breaking. I'm tired of running. He met her eyes. Then we stop running, we make a stand. For a long time, neither spoke. The desert wind howled against the metal, carrying with it the smell of smoke and gunpowder. Sarah closed the laptop slowly, the light fading from her face until only the outline of her profile remained, a soldier haunted, broken, but unyielding. She whispered almost to herself, sometimes to protect the truth, you have to lose everything. Marcus looked at her, and in that moment he knew she already had. The night deepened around them, heavy with the weight of what came next. The desert was a graveyard of echoes. By the time they reached the abandoned airfield, dawn was a faint bruise on the horizon. The place looked forgotten, rusted hangars half buried in sand, the faded outline of a runway stretching into nothing. Marcus killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. "This it?" Sarah asked quietly. He nodded. "Last used 15 years ago for covert airdrops. Satellite dishes are still up there on the roof. If we're lucky, they'll still link to the old 2D network." She opened the door and stepped out into the wind. The air tasted like dust and rain, the kind that never really falls. The world felt suspended, like the moment before a trigger pull. Marcus watched her walk ahead, boots crunching softly over gravel, her silhouette framed by the rising sun. There was something about the way she moved, steady, silent, purpose, wrapped in exhaustion. He followed her inside. The hangar smelled of oil and time. Broken crates, empty tool racks, and an old aircraft fuselage rusting in one corner. Marcus set up the generator while Sarah secured the perimeter, old habits done in silence. When the lights flickered on, the space felt alive again, even if only barely. He powered up the comms console, dust billowing as the old equipment hummed to life. The satellite dish outside creaked, adjusting slowly. Sarah stepped up beside him. "Think it'll still work?" Marcus smiled faintly. Machines don't forget their purpose. They just wait for someone who remembers how to use them. She gave him a look, tired but approving. He connected the encrypted drive. "Once I send this through, there's no turning back. Every network, every agency, every black budget cell will know we lit the fuse." Sarah nodded, then lighted. But he didn't, not yet. He looked at her, the dirt on her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the quiet strength that kept her upright long after her spirit should have broken. "You ready for what comes next?" he asked. "I stopped being ready years ago," she said softly, "but I'm still here." He nodded. That was enough. They began the upload. The old console whirred, lights blinking in slow rhythm. On screen, the data packets began transferring, hundreds of files, names, and evidence flowing through a line of code older than most of the people it was about to expose. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Just the soft hum of the generator and the distant wind scraping against metal. Then the console beeped. Sarah leaned closer. "What is it?" "Signal interference," Marcus muttered. "They found the feed." "Already?" They must have tagged the metadata from Lena's last transmission. The lights flickered, the transfer paused. Marcus's fingers flew over the keys. "I can reroute through the secondary satellite. It'll take longer, but they won't be able to block both." Sarah glanced toward the open hangar doors. "Then do it fast, we might not have long." Outside, a low rumble rolled across the desert. At first Marcus thought it was thunder, then he saw the dust plume. Two vehicles, armored, closing fast. "Company," Sarah said. He looked up. "How far?" 2 minutes, maybe less." "Finish what you can," she said. "I'll buy us time." "Sarah." She was already moving, grabbing her rifle and heading for the doorway. Marcus watched her silhouette disappear into the rising light. Then he turned back to the console. The transfer resumed, slowly, too slowly. "Come on," he whispered, "come on." Outside, Sarah took position behind a stack of metal drums near the hangar's edge. She could see them now, two matte black SUVs, dust swirling around them as they tore down the dirt track. She steadied her breathing, counted her shots. As the first vehicle closed to 100 meters, she squeezed the trigger. The windshield shattered. The SUV veered, hit a ditch, and rolled. The second braked hard, men pouring out tactical gear, night optics, rifles. Sarah ducked back behind cover as rounds ripped through the air, punching holes through the metal beside her. "Marcus," she said into her comm, "we've got at least 6 hostiles, probably more inside the vehicle." "Transfer at 60%, he replied. "Just hold them." She reloaded, exhaled slow, and peeked over the drum. 2 men advancing left, 1 flanking right. Coordinated, professional. She fired twice, clean hits. The third ducked behind a wheel well. Then a new sound, the high whine of a drone. She looked up, small recon units circling overhead. "Marcus, they've got air support." "Copy that, 15 more percent." "Make it 10. She shifted position, moving through the shadows along the hangar wall. Her world had narrowed to heartbeat, breath, motion. The drone's camera caught a flash of her movement. Red light swept across the wall. Seconds later, gunfire chewed through the corner where she'd been. She dove, rolled, came up firing. The drone sputtered, smoke trailing as it spiraled down. "Drone down," she said. "Good work," Marcus replied, voice tight. Inside, he watched the progress bar crawl forward. 92%, 94, 97. The screen flashed red. "Signal jam detected." "Damn it." Sarah's voice crackled through the comm. "What happened?" "They're blocking the uplink. I can't finish the transfer." "Then you'll have to move it." "How?" "Portable transmitter. The dish is too exposed. Take it to the ridge, higher elevation, clearer signal." Marcus hesitated. "That's suicide." She smiled faintly through the comm. "So staying here." He looked toward the ridge, half a mile out, bare rock under open sky. He'd have to cross it with no cover. "Sarah," he said quietly, "if I go, you'll be alone." "I've been alone a long time, Marcus. Go." He grabbed the portable transmitter, slung his rifle, and ran. The wind tore at him as he crossed the open ground, sand whipping his face. Bullets hit the dirt around him, kicking up plumes of dust. Sarah covered him, taking precise shots to draw fire away. Each pull of the trigger echoed like punctuation, a promise, a heartbeat, a vow. When Marcus reached the ridge, he dropped to his knees, connected the unit, and powered it up. The signal light blinked once, then steady green. "Connection reestablished," he said, breath ragged. Sarah's voice came back, calm despite the chaos. "Then finish it." He resumed the upload. The final percentages crawled upward, 98-99. "Upload complete." A long silence. Then, transmission confirmed. Data replicated across civilian networks. Marcus exhaled hard, the sound half a laugh, half disbelief. "It's done." But the relief lasted only seconds. A flash exploded near the hangar, concussion grenade. "Sarah." "Static." "Sarah, respond." He tore down the ridge, sliding in the sand, rifle up. The hangar loomed ahead, black smoke spilling from its side. He saw her through the haze, crouched behind cover, bleeding from her shoulder but still fighting. 2 hostiles down, 1 closing from behind. Marcus fired, dropping the man instantly, then sprinted to her side. "Still breathing." She gave a weak grin. "Barely." He pulled her behind a support beam. "You're hit." "Nothing vital." Her voice was thin, strained. "You finished the upload." "Yeah." "Then we won." "Not yet," he said. "They'll keep coming." She smiled faintly. "Let them. They can't bury the truth now." The sound of approaching rotors filled the air, a helicopter, sweeping low over the desert. Marcus looked at her. "Evac or strike?" Her eyes stayed on the sky. "Doesn't matter, we made it out once. We can do it again." But even as she said it, Marcus saw the blood spreading down her arm, her breathing shallow. He tightened his grip on her hand. "Stay with me, Sarah." She looked at him, a small, tired smile. "You know, Vega used to say the same thing." "Don't you dare compare me to Vega," he said, voice breaking. Her laugh was soft. "You're both terrible at goodbyes." The helicopter swept lower. Searchlights cut across the airfield. Marcus raised his rifle, eyes burning, ready to make his last stand. But then another sound. Engines from the west. Two pickup trucks, civilian, unmarked, barreled across the sand. Their headlights cut through the dust, bright, defiant. "Who the hell?" Marcus muttered. A voice came over his comm, rough, female, steady. "This is Ward, Lena Ward." Sarah's head jerked up. "Lena." The voice crackled again. "I told you I don't die easy." Marcus blinked. "How?" "Tracker was fake," Lena said. "They wanted you to believe I was dead. Figured I'd use that lie against them." Sarah's laugh broke through the static, half disbelief, half joy. "You insane, beautiful woman." "Yeah, well," Lena said, "get your asses ready. We're taking you home." Marcus helped Sarah up, both leaning against the broken wall as the truck slid to a stop. Lena herself jumped out, rifle slung, eyes fierce. "Did you get the data out?" she shouted. Marcus nodded, every bite. "Then we're not done yet," she said. "They'll try to bury the truth under chaos. We go public before they can rewrite the story." Sarah's hand found Marcus's, weak but steady. "Told you we'd finish it." He looked at her, then at the rising sun cutting through the smoke, dawn reclaiming the sky. And in that moment, despite the blood, the pain, the endless war against shadows, Marcus realized something. They hadn't just exposed corruption. They'd proven something deeper, that even in the darkest corners, truth still found a way to breathe. The helicopter banked away, retreating toward the horizon. The sound faded. For the first time in days, the desert was quiet again. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, exhausted. "We really did it." Marcus nodded, eyes on the sunrise. "Yeah, but the hard part starts now." "What's that?" she murmured. "Living." She smiled faintly, and the desert wind carried her quiet laugh across the sand, soft, fragile, alive. The world didn't change overnight. It never does. But by the next morning, the headlines had started. Leaked military files expose covert corruption network. Defense officials under investigation for war profiteering. The truth, raw, brutal, undeniable, had found daylight. Marcus sat in the back of a rusted van parked just outside El Paso, laptop open, scanning the feeds. Every major outlet was running fragments of their data. The files had replicated across hundreds of independent servers, impossible to erase. It was out, finally, irrevocably out. Beside him, Sarah sat quiet, her arm wrapped in a field dressing. The wound was deep but clean. She hadn't said much since the escape. Her body was there, but her mind, it was somewhere far behind them, back in that burning hangar, in the faces of the ones they'd lost. Lena leaned against the van's door, drinking from a dented thermos. "They'll deny it," she said softly. "They'll call it fabricated, disinformation, anything but the truth." Marcus nodded. "They'll try." "But it's too late," Lena continued. "Half the files are mirrored on foreign news networks. Public transparency groups are already verifying timestamps." "Let them dig," Marcus said. "The deeper they go, the worse it gets." For a long moment, the three of them sat in silence, not victory, not relief. Something quieter, something heavier. Sarah finally spoke. "How many people died because of this?" Neither of them answered. She stared out the windshield, eyes unfocused. "I used to think truth was a weapon, clean, sharp. You use it and everything wrong just stops." Marcus watched her, waiting. "But it's not like that," she said quietly. "Truth cuts everyone, even the ones who deserve to live." Lena set the thermos down. "That's why people fear it." Sarah nodded slowly. "And why some of us can't stop chasing it." The sun climbed higher, heat shimmering off the cracked asphalt. Marcus closed the laptop. "We can't stay here. They'll still come after us, not officially, not on paper, but through shadows. There's always another cleanup team." Lena smirked. Good thing shadows are where we live. Sarah turned toward them. No, we're done running. The date is out. Our job over. Marcus frowned. You think it's over because they're exposed? She shook her head. It's over because I don't have anything left to give. He studied her, the slump in her shoulders, the faint tremor in her hands. The mission had taken everything she had left. Lena's voice softened. What will you do? Sarah gave a small, tired laugh. I don't even know who I am without this fight. Marcus leaned back, staring at the empty horizon. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it's time to find out. They drove north for hours, no destination, just distance. The desert bled into hills, and the hills into forest. Somewhere between the silence and the hum of the engine, Sarah drifted into sleep for the first time in days. When she woke, it was dusk again. They stopped near a ridge overlooking a dry lake bed. The air was cool, painted in gold and shadow. Marcus was outside, leaning against the truck, eyes on the horizon. Lena was setting up a small campfire. Sarah stepped out slowly, wincing at the pull in her shoulder. Marcus looked back at her. You should be resting. I've been resting my whole life, she said. He smiled faintly. You always have a comeback. Old habits. They sat by the fire as the light faded. No words for a while, just the crackle of burning wood and the quiet rhythm of shared exhaustion. Finally Sarah spoke. What happens now? Marcus poked at the fire with a stick. Lena, going to vanish again. New name, new story. She'll make sure the files keep circulating. Lena nodded. Somebody has to protect the signal. Sarah turned to Marcus. And you? He shrugged. I don't know, maybe I'll finally finish that cabin I was building, live somewhere quiet, grow old with my ghosts. She smiled. You'd hate it. Probably. The flames flickered between them, light dancing across tired faces. Then softly she said, You saved me. He shook his head. You saved yourself. I just refused to let you die trying. She looked down, voice trembling. You don't understand. For 3 years I thought survival was cowardice. Every time I woke up I thought it was wrong that I still could. But then you showed up. Marcus looked at her, really looked. The soldier who'd fought the world and somehow kept her soul intact. He said nothing, just let the silence say what words couldn't. Lena stood, brushing dust from her jeans. I'll get the satellite feed ready. There's something I want you both to see. She disappeared toward the van, leaving them by the fire. Sarah stared into the flames. Do you think they'll remember us? Marcus frowned. Who? People, soldiers, the ones who died without knowing why. He thought for a long time before answering. They won't remember our names, but maybe they'll remember the noise we made when we refused to stay silent. She smiled faintly. That's enough for me. Lena returned with the laptop and set it between them. The screen flickered to life. Live footage from Washington. News cameras. Crowds. A press conference. Marcus leaned forward. Who's that? Lena zoomed in. A woman stood at the podium, civilian clothes, microphone shaking slightly in her hand. Sarah's eyes widened. That's Captain Morales. Marcus remembered the name, one of the few survivors from Sarah's original unit. She's speaking out, Lena said. Your files gave her proof. She's testifying in front of Congress. The crowd noise rose, cameras flashed. Sarah watched silently as Morales's voice echoed through the speakers. We were betrayed by our own command. They sold our positions, our people, our lives. This isn't about politics. This is about dignity. Sarah's eyes shimmered with tears. Lena smiled softly. You see, it's working. Marcus looked at Sarah. You started this. No, she said, shaking her head. We did, all of us who refused to look away. The fire cracked again, sending sparks spiraling into the night. Hours later, when Lena fell asleep in the truck and the fire burned low, Marcus found Sarah standing at the edge of the ridge, staring at the stars. He joined her quietly. "You should sleep," he said. She shook her head. "I don't want to close my eyes yet." "Why?" "Because for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of what I'll see." The wind moved gently through her hair, carrying the faint scent of dust and smoke. Marcus looked at her, the faint smile, the weary peace, and realized she wasn't the same woman he'd met on that shooting range. The fear was still there, but it had turned into something stronger. Resolve. She turned to him. "Do you ever think about what all this cost?" He nodded. "Every day." "Was it worth it?" He looked toward the horizon, endless, unanswerable. "Ask me tomorrow." She smiled softly. "You always dodge the hard questions." He chuckled. "That's why I'm still alive." The silence stretched again, not heavy this time, just real. After a long pause, she said, "I think I'll stay here for a while." He frowned. "Here?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows my name. Maybe I'll build something instead of destroying it." He studied her face, the faint lines, the eyes that had seen too much. She wasn't running, not anymore. She was choosing peace, even if it was temporary. "You'll disappear," he said. She nodded. "That's the idea." He exhaled slowly. "Then at least say goodbye." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Goodbye, Marcus." He didn't answer, just pulled her into an embrace that said everything words couldn't. When she finally pulled away, there were tears in both their eyes. Then she turned, walked toward the dark line of trees and vanished into it. Marcus stood there for a long time, the wind carrying the echo of her footsteps until even that was gone. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, he whispered to the empty air words meant for her, for Vega, for Lena, for every ghost left behind. "Sometimes," he said softly, "dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." He watched the sunrise in silence, not as a soldier, not as a man burdened by guilt, but as someone who finally understood that survival, too, can be an act of courage. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of distant helicopters, not in pursuit, not anymore, but in patrol. Routine. The world kept turning. And somewhere out there, in a small, forgotten town, a woman named Sarah Mitchell lived quietly under a different name. No medals, no recognition, no glory. Just peace. For once, that was enough.